this is Fat Tuesday. And on Fat Tuesday, we work on things that are related to the Fat Quarter Shop. So let's get started. So I have my Jelly Bar book. This is the Jelly Bar Volume 5 book, and this has 20 Jelly Bar quilts. And these quilts are all interesting because they are made up of one block. And it just depends on the size of the block with how many blocks that you need to make. What we're doing is taking one block from 10 quilts and we're making a sampler. So a sampler has all the different blocks. If you will, you've sampled how to make each block. And then from there, you can go back into the book and decide if you want to make any one of those quilts. So this is found on the Fat Quarter Shop website. You can get it there. And as you can see in my glare that I can try to get rid of, as you can see in this book, I have marked the dates for each of the blocks. So we are working on a different block every 2 weeks. This usually doesn't take me that long to do some quilts, but then again, it could, because there are some quilts I haven't finished in over years. So for this one, we are now here at Timberland Roses. So this is the block that we will be working on. And this is 11-5. So we still have 1, 2, 3 more of these blocks to go. This one is actually a small block, and we'll be making 4 of them, and then 2 more weeks, and then 2 more weeks, and then we'll be done all the blocks, and we'll be ready to piece those blocks together to create the quilt top. So again, we're working on this. We are using the Jolly Bars to do this. So this book is inspired by Jolly Bars. Jolly Bars are the size of this book. They are 5 inches by 10 inches. So they are half of a layer cake. Jolly Bars are exclusive to the Fat Quarter Shop. And again, the link for the book and the Jolly Bars can be found in my bio. So this is the book. And these are some of the fabrics that I have from my Jolly Bar collection, which is called Denim and Daisies. So this is a combination of blues of different lights to darks, as well as oranges. And again, you can see that there, and the offset is white. So a Jolly Bar, like most other pre-packaged fabrics, are part of a collection. This collection is Denim and Daisies, and you could get 1 to 3 samples of each piece in the collection, depending on how big the collection is. So I have all mine that I've pulled out. For this one, I'm using 4 prints. So I'm using these 2 oranges and these 2 blues. And then you can see the prints that are in them. So the print is repeated for this orange and blue, but that's what I decided to go with. You can mix and match this any way you want. You don't have to use Jolly Bars, even though this is a Jolly Bar sampler. You absolutely, Kimberly is using, she used layer cakes, so she used 10 by 10 inch squares. You could use your scraps that you wanted to use. It is totally up to you what you want to use. I am also using this fabric here. And this is a white on white, kind of hard to see, but it is a white on white, and this is my background. So the one thing about white on whites, or any color on a color, is that sometimes they blend in on both sides, and so you do have to pay attention to which side is considered the right side and which side is considered the wrong side. This whole quilt is mainly made up of half square triangles. So we are always starting off with those half square triangles. I have done so many half square triangles in this last year that I am no longer twisting my face up anymore when I see half square triangles. A lot of quilts will call for them, and sometimes it's the whole quilt. And I'm like, if it's a whole quilt, to be quite honest with you, I'm like, nope, not doing it. But I've gotten better, and so I absolutely will do them now, whereas before it was like, nope, not happening. So we take each one of our squares and we add a background to each one to make our half square triangles. And with those half square triangles, we are going to draw a line on the diagonal. This will be the guideline for how we are going to stitch a 1/4 inch on either side of the line, which will yield from each square 2 half square triangles. So we're just going to draw a line. This is an assembly line process, and so it makes sense to just go ahead and do all the units or those parts of the units at one time. The block itself consists of 3 colors, the background being 1, and then there will be 2 other colors in there, so you can't just make a whole block without making all the parts. So we're starting off with the half square triangles, and then we are going to make the other part, which is going to be a 4 patch. And I am going to try something a little bit different, but we'll see how this is going to work. Sometimes patterns, the way that they're written, they can be altered. And if you're good with the alterations, it'll save you possibly a few steps. So everything gets marked. What I am going to do is stitch a 1/4 inch line on either side of this line. So a 1/4 inch away, a 1/4 inch away. The deeper you go in, the less of a triangle you're going to have. The closer to the line you get, the bigger that triangle will be, but the less seam allowance you will have. I err when I am making half square triangles, depending on how big they tell me to cut the squares. I err on a scant 1/4 inch, so that I have a little bit more wiggle room to square them up. So I'm going to take this to my machine. I'm going to line my foot up so that my needle is a 1/4 inch away from that line. And I'm just going to stitch right now. Hello, 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 everyone. Welcome in. We are here for what I like to call Fat Tuesday, when I work on all things that are related to the Fat Quarter Shop. I have been doing every other week because this particular quilt along doesn't require me to do a post or video every week. So I am thinking about like how to incorporate other things for the Fat Quarter Shop on those off weeks. So we will think about that and how to do that. In the meantime, we are making half square triangles for our Timberland Roses quilt block. We are on quilt block number 7. So this is 7 out of 10. And I am sewing and I ran out of bobbin. How about that? And you knew that earlier today, Jennifer, when you were sewing and you said, oh, I gotta change my bobbin. And then you walked right up in here and then didn't change the bobbin. Hi, Dawn, how are you? Thank you. Okay. And of course, I have bobbins already ready, but you know, it was too much like right to check for it before I did this. They say, only me, only me. Oops. Okay, so again, we have our bobbins already set and ready to go. So I do pre-wind bobbins Usually I will do, depending on the project, I will do like at least 3 pre-wound. And if I'm really just taking my time, watching television, talking on the phone, I might make more than that, especially because gray is a color that I use most often. So we're just gonna go down and start this again. And this time we have thread in the bobbin. Stitching life together, how are you doing? Okay, we did this one. This one we didn't finish. Let me do this one first, and then I'll stop midway through to get that other one. And I will say this, that as much as half square triangles usually aren't my friend, if I am watching television, especially Christmas movies, because we are in Christmas season, I will actually sit and just make all of the half square triangles at one time. And it seems like when you're watching television or talking on the phone, it does go a lot faster than if you're just sitting there and concentrating on doing a lot of half square triangles. And I've seen so many quilts where I'm like, it's amazing how beautiful those quilts are, but those half square triangles. And especially because they meet up in corners and they can get kind of bulky. And massaging that fabric is like, wow. Oh, okay. I need to do YT a little bit more, and I haven't. So this goes onto YT. Then I need to start showing up and being present for that. Okay, we're gonna clip. Clip, clip, and clip. And I think we have, so this one is, both sides are done. So when both sides are done, it'll look like that. So you can see it's about 1/4 inch on either side. We will finish this one. Is this one done? This one is done. And we just have this one, I think, left to go. So we're just doing 1/4 inch on either side. Like I said, if I can help it, I try to do like a scant 1/4 inch, and that's just a little less, like a hair less than 1/4 inch. It's not so much that it's 1/8 inch, but just enough that it gives me a little wiggle room if my seams are a little off. Sometimes my hand goes a little wonky. It doesn't matter that I have a special foot in there, and I'd rather err on the side of caution than to not have enough. Let's cut this off. Okay. And then we can use our rotary cutter if your hand is steady enough. And we can just ride that line, that center line, all the way up. So all of these are done. Half square triangles are done. Half square makes a triangle. Boom, bam. And now it's just time to press this. Again, you make decisions when you're pressing whether you want your seams to be open. I won't say again because I didn't say this is the first time I was on earlier. You would make a decision whether you want those seams to be pressed open or whether you want them to be pressed to one side. Typically, we press to the dark side if we can help it. Okay, so we're just pressing right along there just to add some heat. This is called lazy. so lazy is pressing them all at one time. We're just basically helping our seams and our thread to lay a little flatter, dark side up, and we can just press that open. If you prefer and you want to take the time to get in there, you can open up that seam. Again, this is personal preference. And just press the seam open. Sometimes when we're working with half square triangles, the seams all meet, especially in those corners. And what we don't want to do is have a bunch of bulk in there, especially if it's all going to the same size. Of course, that would get a little wrinkled in on me there. And I think I need a new ironing board. I think that's what it is. This one kind of dips, and I don't think it helps me to get as flat of a surface as I would like. There it is. Okay. So we're just going to go through and press all these. So again, welcome, welcome, welcome everyone. My name is Jennifer Hale. I am a quilter, sewer, a crafter. I am an assistant principal. I am an educator, and I come on whenever at will, but especially on Tuesdays around 9 o'clock to work on projects, especially centered around the Fat Quarter Shop. I am an affiliate, and we are currently working on the Jolly Bar Volume 5 Quilt Along, and we're making a sampler from the book. Everything can be found in my bio. And the book itself has inspiration for 20 different quilts. The good thing about those quilts is they're all made up from the same blocks. So it's a great time for you to practice different blocks. And that's why it is a sampler quilt. Usually sampler quilts don't have a lot of block repeats. So you might say, you know what, I really like the Ohio Star, and you might have an Ohio Star in each corner of the sampler, but it wouldn't be like all over. It's not the same thing. So you have like a variety of blocks that you would use. So there are 20 quilts, and that means that there are 20 different blocks that you can make from the book. And because of that, it's a great book, as with all the other volumes, to make a sampler quilt or to test out your skills. This one is very, very heavy in half square triangles, and so you could absolutely see how, if half square triangles are intimidating or whether they're just not your cup of tea, how you could probably actually break down the quilt into days, months, years, to get it done, and then not to feel overwhelming with the amount of half square triangles that you would have to do. There's some quilts where like there might be 140 half square triangles. There are other quilts where there might be 500 and some half square quilts. Hey darling, how are you? So this one only calls for 8, thank goodness. So we only needed 4 units to do these 8. And once we finish these, we are going to make the unit that will be a 4-patch. And then from the 4-patch, we will have 2 4-patches and 2 half square triangles to make the block. Easy peasy. And again, in this assembly line order, so that it moves a little bit faster, but you see it all coming together at one time as I'm sitting here just ruffling this up. Hey KF, how are you doing? Long time no see. So we're just going through these. I was sitting tonight, I sat today and I said, you know what, you got to clean up your life. Especially because the holidays are coming and Christmas explodes in this house. So, you know, I take it room by room. We will not discuss that. In my window, the Charlie Brown Christmas theme has never gone away. So that's been up all year. So I don't have to do that window. But there are other rooms that, yeah, they need to be done. There are certain Christmas trees that stay up all year round. There are certain other things that stay up all year round. And they always say whatever brings you joy. And Christmas always brings me joy, so I keep it up. So there are some things that I need to do a little bit differently, or I have some different ideas, but I'm trying real hard not to go out and buy anything for decorations, because that's how the decorations are flowing in here. Like, I have bought so many decorations over the years that, ooh, we're not even going to discuss that. Thank you for, hey, is that Tammy? Hey, Tammy, thank you for the popular. I appreciate you. Okay, and one more. We do have to square these up. And I don't think that I did. Okay. Okay, Tammy. So I'm going to open this up, and this will be the last one. And again, you can see, like, for me, this is one of the reasons why. Oh, thank you. This is one of the reasons why I don't open up my seams, because it just takes too long for me. I can just press them and be done with them. But it does make a difference on the inside when everything lays nice and flat. So while it's not something that I like to do, it is something I like to look at the end. Okay. So our half square triangles are done. And then we're going to take our ruler. And so it looks like this. We sometimes can call these quilting rulers, quilting squares. So they have, what I like about these are these have the diagonals on them. This one is specifically for like squaring up small squares, making charm pack type squares, 5" by 5". But it also has those diagonals, so this is great for squaring up half square triangles. I don't know. I would have to compare that. I do pretty good with the nesting when I nest them. And if I pay attention. Those are like my two big go-tos. But like I said, if I can avoid a half square triangle, or we're avoiding a half square triangle. And we're just lining this up. Making sure that everything is the way it's supposed to be. And then we'll trim off that excess. And so here again, this is the Jolly Bar book. This is by Fat Quarter Shop. This is Jolly Bar Volume 5. And we are making the Timberland roses. Lining everything up right there in that center. So we're getting off those dog ears that are on the edges, as well as any overflow. And it shouldn't be too much. Sometimes a half square triangle pattern, if they want to be exact and people don't want to waste fabric, they'll call for, like, let's say 4 7/8. And I'm like, yeah, that's not happening. I will waste that extra 1/8 inch and I will go to 5. I don't do 1/8 if I can help it. Look, this, my rotary cutter, let's talk about their blade needs to be changed. And that's part of the reason why you hear it. And I keep saying, you can change the blade, and then I don't. But I really do. I'm working too hard with it right now. And I'm working too hard with it because it is dull. I have like a bunch of rotary cutters. I have some down here. I have some upstairs. And honestly, like when I pull them out, I don't keep up with them. And I'm like, which one is this one? Because some of them look alike. When I used to go to quilting classes or quilts, like all-day quilt-a-thons or things like that, I always had something packed so that way I would never forget what I needed. And then, such as a time like this, you start unpacking stuff and saying, you know what, you're not going to that, or you need to clean that bag out. And then I put this up somewhere, and then I'm like, oh, I could use this one. And then I remember, you know what, you need to change this. Have a lovely evening, darling. Have a wonderful dinner, and I will see you in the streets. Okay. And then we have one more. What is that moment in your life when you sit back and you say to yourself, you know what, I think I messed up. But that's okay, because we're going to make lemonade out of lemons. Okay, so all of these are squared up. And so this is the book here, the Jolly Bar book that I'm using for all the quilt blocks. On page 2, here are all of the different blocks that we're making, all the different quilts that are here. And let's see if I could do this with honoring the copyright. And so here is the, if I can get my, that's the final block. Yeah, trying to get that in. So that's what it's going to look like. So right now we're working on the half square triangle part of it, and then we're getting ready to do these 4 patches that are here. So we're making 1 block each. We are not making the entire quilt. because we're doing a sampler. So with the sampler, we are just doing 1 block each. So this is going to call for a 4-patch. I find it easier to make strip units than it is to do the individual blocks. So I'm just going to add these together and then subcut them. And I'll show you what I mean. I'll do one just so that you can see it. And let me cut these together. Well, let me cut those together and then let me show you what happens and why. Okay. So this is the way the pattern calls for it to go. Okay. Let me run another one through just so that I can keep the chain piecing going for this. Okay. So this is the way the pattern calls for it. The 2 white squares and then the 2 colored squares. Whatever those colors are. You would place right sides together, and then you're going to stitch, and then you will have the unit that you need. Me doing it this way, same thing, just now, let me turn the ruler right, make sure I'm doing this right. When I cut these, I get the same units. So it just saves me a couple steps in doing them individually and running them through as a chain. If I had yardage instead of jolly bars, I would have left them as strips. So because they are jolly bars, I have to do them with the, you know, whatever the width was that I had to work, because I still had to cut these out. Okay, so I can press this open. I have, oh, those 2 are there. So these 2 are stitched. Again, if I want to press my seams open, I can press them open. So, like, what is the, so Fabric Cafe, they come out with a book for 3-yard quilts. And usually the yards are very easy, the quilts are very easy to put together. And they do a lot of like that strip piecing, where they will tell you to cut out so many strips. You sew those strips together and then you subcut them. Okay, let me just open these 2 up. Just for the sake of showing that, and again, that's up to you. So if you're using yardage or you're using scraps and you're like, you know what, I can just do this from the scrap, this is just one little workaround for that. I am all about saving time. Can't say as much about saving money because I spend too much of it, as I went to the lobby of hobbies today and did that. Did I see they had 5-yard quilts? Hey Shamir, I didn't see those yet. So I need to look at, like, look, you're enabler. That's what I'm gonna call you. You're an enabler. I didn't need to know they had those. I haven't seen the 5-yards yet. So this is the other way that you could do it. I cut the first one closed. I can also cut it open, again, measuring with my ruler at that point, and then just cut it. So whichever way you prefer to do it is the way that you can do it. So we're going to put these pieces together because we're going to piece everything together once we do all of this. So I'm going to just continue to do this the easier way. We're going to get the other ones done, and then we're going to get on with subcutting those. Once we subcut these, press them open, subcut them, we're going to stitch those 4-patch units together, and then once the 4-patch units are squared up, then we can go ahead and put all of the blocks together. Like, that's how simple this block is to assemble. And again, if I were making the whole quilt, all I'm doing is just chain piecing everything together, you know, as units. I would not do individual blocks. I would just do sections. So I would do all my half square triangles. I would do all of my 4 patches, and then I would put all of the units together. That's just me. When I first started out, I was doing each block because I wanted to see what it looked like. But I also find that I get a better mix when I do it this way, depending on what the final result is going to look like. Sometimes you may end up with blocks that you didn't want together, like, oh man, I didn't want 4 oranges together. And sometimes you may want 4 oranges together. That's up to you. Okay, so we're going to clip, clippity clip, 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 clip. We're going to iron all these open, and then we will put those units together. Let me move these out the way. Those are already done. I was working out yesterday and I hurt my wrist. It's still a little sore, but the good thing is it feels much better. Because, you know, Monday and Wednesday are my torture days with my trainer, and having to tell that man that my wrist hurt would have been, it's just not the end of the day. Like, he doesn't do well with injuries. He doesn't do well with you not working out. So I am making a block for the quilt that I am working on. This is called it's called a Jolly Bar 5 sampler quilt. And so what we are doing is making a block. We are making 10 blocks from the Jolly Bar 5 pattern book that I have, and then we're going to assemble all of them. The assembly, unfortunately, won't take place until about December, because it is a block every other week. So this is a slow sew-along. This is not a quick sew-along. It does give people an opportunity to see all of the blocks, how they are constructed, and then you know, you're able to kind of pace. So it's great for beginners. It's great for procrastinators to get this done. You know, I got another block I got to work on every 2 weeks, and then do all the other 50 bazillion chores that we have. But you absolutely, if I weren't doing this sponsored by the Fat Quarter Shop, I probably could have knocked this out like in like 2 weeks tops. Probably could have knocked it out in a week, but I'll give myself some grace, depending on when I was working on it. Now, let me work on it in the summertime when I don't have nothing else better to do but sit at the machine all day. Oh, we could have knocked it out real quick. Lives under the bridge, how are you doing? I have been fine. I took a nap. I did some shopping today. I went out and voted. We were off today, so Philly schools closed. Well, Philly public schools closed because they use our spaces for voting. And so our little honey bunnies get to stay home, mainly to keep them safe. You don't know who is coming into those spaces when you are when they're voting. And so yeah, you know, not that we believe the bad in everybody, but we also need to be cautious in this day and age. So darn, we got to stay home today. And then next week is Veterans Day, and we get to stay home again. Darn. Okay. And we're just going through now and measuring. And again, even though I'm kind of working quickly, I am eyeballing. It's the same thing over and over again. So when I am measuring twice and cutting once. So it is important to do that part because, yeah, if you don't, you make mistakes, and sometimes they're undoable. And sometimes you can get around them. It just depends on what your final project is going to look like and how it fits into what you're doing. Okay, so we have all our units. So each of these units is going to look like that to create the 4-pack. And again, to make sure that everything does what it's supposed to do, I do like to lay them out. So that I know what direction they're going in. And it reduces the fact that I, who always can make a mistake, won't make as many mistakes. Okay. So everything is laid out, ready to go. And we can take it back to our machine and chain piece. We're going to take these and just go down and just flip one, the top onto the bottom. Line up our centers, take it to the machine, and stitch. We have 4 of each one, so I have 16 units that I need to stitch together. These units are small enough, and so because they're small enough, I don't have to use clips or pins if you prefer. I can just nestle them with my fingers, but if you feel some kind of way, you can put the clip. I feel like because they're small enough, by the time I've added the clip and took it to the machine, I'm taking the clip out. And again, if you're watching television, like this can go relatively quickly. I'm just lining those seams up in the center. That's the most important thing. I don't care if the ends hang over. What I care about is that those center seams line up. Because I can trim off the excess or lose it in the seam allowance. So I'm not worried about the overspill on the edges. I'm worried about that center. And if it is a little off, it is not the end of the world. If it is a lot off, we're gonna seam rip. And so, for example, just so you can see, if I don't line these up, let's say I line up the edges. When I go to turn these, if I were to stitch that, you can see it's off. Because my edges, I don't know how I was cutting this. But if I line up the centers, those seams, when I go to open it, they should be lined up perfectly. They should be, keyword is should. Because sometimes when, and that's the reason why it's good to use clips, sometimes your fabric will pull and shift, and the clips and the pins keep it from shifting. Okay, line up and we have one more. And last one. So all of these now have been chain pieced. So I had 16 of these units. Chain pieced together. There should now be 8. As we put them together 2 by 2 to create a 4-patch. Hey Joy, how are you doing, my love? So they're all chain pieced. They are all together in those unit colors. So I am going to snip them apart so that I can press them. Take them back to the iron, and we will open these up. And again, personal preference to one side. You could do the little spin when you do them to one side. I don't have that option anymore because I decided to open them up. So I'm just going to open these up and just give it a press. Awesome. I am so glad to see you're doing well, and thank you. Okay, I'm going to turn that upside down. And again, if you feel so that you need to give it a squirt, you give it a squirt, but you don't need much. The only time that you really need a lot of spray starch is in the beginning, when you may want to wash and then starch your fabric, or if it's a pre-cut like this, to starch it and press it so that you get as much of the shrinkage that you possibly can out of it, so that, you know, it doesn't shrink on you too much while you're piecing the parts together. Typically, for the most part, quilters don't wash some of their fabrics, especially pre-cuts, because they're already cut. And when you go to wash them, you're going to get some fraying, and you're going to lose possibly a 1/4 inch, sometimes an 1/8 of an inch, and that makes a difference if you did not buy, you know, I mean, with a like extra for a pre-cut, or, you know, if you need a certain size. So for these Jolly Bars, right, if I need a 5-inch block, it's already cut 5 by 10. So any shrinkage I have is going to keep me from having a 5-inch block, and that may be a problem. So I may choose not to use any steam or use any starch to do that, if that's the case, just so that I can have that piece as true to 5 inches as possible, and then I'll wash it on the back end. Hey, darling, how are you doing today, Miss Dawn? You know, in some cases, and like I would be really careful. And so I'll tell you what I did. I and so, but then that's why, you know, you use color catchers. But I bought a pre-cut red roses, and somewhere down the line, because you know, of course, it's sad, and I didn't make the quilt like I should have. Something got wet, and the red ran. And so, you know, the good thing is that I could wash it and get the red bleeding out as much as possible. But sometimes it's easier to wash, especially like your reds and your purples, to get as much of that dye out as possible before you know, start doing your project. But if you're doing it on the back end, like I said, you could use like what they call a color catcher in the washing machine and wash the quilt. But let's be honest, when you use a color catcher or when you wash the quilt, it loses some of its color, right? It's going to fade a little bit because that color isn't going to be as vibrant because you're washing some of the dye out. So sometimes we want that bright color to shine through in the beginning, and then after somebody uses it, we don't care if it dulls up a little bit, but that's up to you. So sometimes if we're using the quilt in a show or to display, and we know it's not going to get washed much, or you know it's going to be up on the wall, so it might not get wet, we might not be as concerned. You know what? And I love them, but I'm like, why do I have to use so many of them? Can't they come up with one that I only need to use one? Probably it'd be the same prices. They'll just make it more expensive. But, okay. So here are the 4 patches that we need. And of course, like I said, we gotta square these up. So we have 8 of them. I still like to use my lines to get them exactly where I need to. To make sure everything is nice and lined up. Now, I will say this. Somewhere in there, somebody wasn't paying attention. So her blocks are off, but we won't discuss who that person is. But she's going to make it work. Because she doesn't know how she did that to herself. But we're gonna make it do what it do. Oops. I don't use them enough. But somebody said that you could reuse them. I have not tried that yet because you know what I do? I wash, right? And then I wash. And then I forget. And then I go, oh, let me get rid of these dryer sheets. And then I go, oh, that was a color catcher. So I probably need to get like a basket that I have in the laundry room that I could throw them in to remember that I have them. Okay. Let me do this just so you can see this. Why do I still have a little tag on here that I shouldn't have? Okay. Darks out like that. And then whites to the center. So this is what that block is going to look like when it's put together. Just so you can kind of see that, especially, you know, depending on if, you know, I know it's late night and if anybody wants to see the block, there it is. That's what that'll look like. Now, I'm not going to stitch that together yet until I square up the rest of these, just because I want to mix and match these a little bit. And I'm going to do it a little different, I think, than what I'm thinking. But it may not be what I'm thinking, so. I'm measuring as much as possible so that I can get this as straight as possible. And again, we're only making the one block. So we are not making the whole quilt. This is only one block. Each block happens every 2 weeks. They have some really cute quilts that are coming up in 2026. A couple that I thought were cute but were not my style. I was like, yeah, I'm not doing that one. But everyone that I could see, I was like, yep, I'm there for that one. So the whole part to this is just to make sure that you have the two half square triangles that are the same, and to make sure that you have the two 4 patches that are the same. But we're also making another 4 patches. Is 1, 2, 3, 4. So this is going to follow the same 4 patch method that we did with other blocks. No. What hole? This hole right here. So this is like the block of the week, every other week. So it's like a block of the month. This is the Jolly Bar Volume 5 book. This is the Jolly Bar Volume 5 by Fat Quarter Shop, and it is a quilt-along that we are doing. So it's a block every 2 weeks. You can find all the information in my bio, and we are working on the Timberland roses. So Shamir, they all have holes in them. Most of them have holes in them, so that when, well, this one isn't going to work with this type of hook, but we can hook them up and then hang them in our sewing spaces. So this one is hanging on a cart that I have down here that I can move around. This doesn't fit on this, but I have like those utility hooks that you would put in a workroom, the ones that are straight, and it'll just hang right there. So the hole is to hang them in the store, and the hole is to hang them in the shop, in your sewing room. Yeah, pay for it. I couldn't think of the word. I was like, no. So not all of them have the holes, but if they do, yeah, they get hung up. Unless they're too big. So depending on the amount of space you have, I may hang the smaller ones, and then the larger ones go into a quilter's rack. So I do have a rack to hang to stand those rulers up, and then I use those. Okay, we got 2 more. So we do need to think about these like that. And there's a possibility of this. So depend. Okay, of course. So I do want to lay them out just to get an idea of how I'm putting them together, and, you know, just to make sure that they look the way that I want them to look. And again, it's easier to lay them out first before you start the second part of putting them all together, because sometimes when I don't lay them out, when I get to the end, the results of the last couple blocks don't look the way that I want them to look. And so this kind of guarantees that I can do this. Yeah, I have a pegboard upstairs in my sewing room upstairs. Converting another room into like a craft room, and so I'm debating on whether I want to put one up on that wall or not, or just keep it on the wall that it's on and then just walk from room to room because it's not like it's that far. Okay. Lisa, how are you? Is that sticky lines on the bottom of the ruler? I have medical tape, and this is the kind that, and I know like on the white it doesn't help, but it's the like gritty kind. And so it's 1 inch, and they're just on the bottom of these, and I put them just in certain spots. You don't need it to cover the whole thing, but it helps to keep it helps the ruler to grip to the fabric better. And what I love about this, Bear the quilter did this, and I was like, oh, okay, that works. So, you know, I copy right along with him. So this helps it to keep from slipping, and you don't need a lot of it. So I've got plenty of tape, and just about most of my rulers all have this on there to hold it in place. It's much cheaper than what the ruler people use, their little dots that they have you buy. That roll is much cheaper than that. So that's just a little trick that I absolutely love. Okay, so we have these two because we just want to make sure. I'm going to stack them, but I just want to make sure that everything looks the way that I want it to look before I start sewing together those units. This is wrong. So all my whites should come to the center. And if something doesn't look the way that I want it to look, I can change it up. Like right now I have, these are all the same. I may not want that. And that's why it's important to do this way. Absolutely. So then that way I get a little bit more mix and match. Okay. And in my mind, I knew that was going to happen. And I said, let me just make sure. I didn't want to have two of the exact same block, of the exact same looking block. So I wanted to make sure that I mixed it up because these two are here. And I didn't want these two to be here. So now these two are up here. These two are over here. And, you know, I can kind of put them together and then it'll give it a little bit more mishy-mashy feel. So now what I can do, because I'm going to put all these together, no, I don't do nothing with nothing that would put colors together, and I just go by what I like. I do like the idea of taking the color value and did I cut this? Where, like, you know, folks have said take a picture of your fabric when you lay it out and then change it to black and white just so you can see the values. I did like that idea. Have I done it yet? No. But I did like that, but yeah, no. I'm not doing... I have never used the app. Okay. That's like another thing to think about. I can't say that I would never, because if somebody shows it to me and shows me the value of it, I might do it. Okay, so everything is laid on top of each other. And look, you've seen some of my quilts. You know I'm not good at colors either. Which is why sometimes my quilts look better when I let other people pick out the colors for me. I'm just not a fan of quilt kits because let me not say it that way. I usually don't buy quilt kits because they cost more. You're paying somebody to cut your fabric for you and to think of the value of the colors and things like that for you. If you prefer that, hey. But you know, it's a great way to have somebody else do it. Hey, how are you? So 4 patch, right? Because we have 4 patches and we're following the same 4 patch method. So we're going to take these and just flip them over. I go right to left. You can absolutely go left to right. When you go in the same order and you remember your order, you remember what side needs to be sewn. Because you don't want to pick this up and then sew the wrong side. I start with the 2 up top first because that's all one unit, and then I go to the bottom and then I repeat. Go to the bottom. There are no seams in this case to line up. There will be in the next one. So because I'm going top to bottom, I'm leaving the blocks together. That way I don't have to remix and match them. So top. To bottom. It's interesting that your husband would do it. My husband was better with colors than I was. I am good for a good black and white moment. To bottom. And we have only 8 of these units to go, so this is an easy part to finish. So the blocks don't take that long to make. They take me longer just because I'm talking and reading and socializing. Top. Ooh. Poor man. To bottom. So one more unit. This makes a total of 4 units. So when we have 4 units, what do we have again? A 4 patch. So we're like making 4 patches for 4 patches for 4 patches. Top. Touch my iron to heat that little puppy up, even though I think I just used it. So it didn't click off on me. Sometimes, you know, depending on how long the iron sits, it has auto off, which is absolutely fabulous. Shamir, did you find those Christmas movies on YT? You know I watched one last night. Okay, so again, we have everything. Now this time, the top and the bottom were together. So I am going to clip every 2. So I'm going to leave 2 in the chain between the 2. Yeah, Prime has them too. And if we open these up, if we did them right in the order in which we're supposed to do them in, we still have the units together, which is absolutely fabulous. And what that does is it helps us to keep order together. Because again, like if you're like if this were a big quilt, I might be tired at some point. I might walk away, go to the bathroom, get something to eat. It may fall on the floor. I may have to put it up. And so by leaving that stitch in the center so that they move as one unit, I don't have to worry about clipping them all together. They're just going to remain in that same order for me. And then I can just push those together. Look, that's criteria number 1. If I decide to seriously date, I'm like, I need somebody that is going to hang with me like Robert hung with me. Because, yeah, he was all about not being left, and he was going for the trip. He figured me out, though. So we would go on road trips, and Robert would drive. Because he says, I don't know how to drive because I don't pay attention. Which is not true, I don't think. But, so he would drive. And plus he was a faster driver than me and a much bolder driver than I was. And so while he was driving, I was on the internet. And while I was on the internet, and it was supposed to be navigating and telling him, but you know, that's what the navigation tool is for. Waze is telling you where to go. Pay attention to Waze while I'm doing something else. So I was looking up the local quilt shops. And then I would be, you know, as I would look them up and see how close they were to whatever route we were on, I was like, can we stop? Can we go? But, you know, and that was like my intent all along, was to go to these quilt shops. And, you know, just do a little, I mean, like, we're there. You know, might as well hit the area. So we would go to the little quilt shops. And, you know, the last time that we took a road trip, we were in, we went to Atlanta. We drove to Atlanta. And I found all the quilt shops along the way. Not all. I found some good ones. This wasn't all of them, because he wasn't going to stop at all of them. And we would, you know, stop at the quilt shops, and, you know, I might spend 5 minutes. No, okay. I might spend like half an hour there, you know, just as long as he, you know, he would tolerate the visit. So I would spend time there. So when we went to Charlotte, when we went to Atlanta, we stopped in Charlotte overnight, because that was a long drive. And especially when your wife has you stopping at quilt shops along the way. And when we got up that morning, he was like, we could go to the stadium. And I was like, the stadium? Like, I don't want to go to the stadium. But he, like, you know, he was sports buff, so he wanted to go to the stadium. So we took pictures at the stadium, and I'm at the stadium with, like, rolling my eyes, like, oh my gosh, we got to stop at the stadium. And I posted that on Facebook. And so then the next time we went to another quilt shop, he took a picture and posted that one. But we had to stop at the stadium in Charlotte. And then when we got to Atlanta, we had to stop at that stadium. I was like, man. But I couldn't say anything because, of course, you know, I found more quilt shops. Because that was the goal every time I went anyway. This is Best Press. And I also have, but I'm not using it right now, I have Flatter. So I've been playing with them, and actually I have another one as well. I've been playing around with them to see which one I like. Real Wrap, I don't see the difference between any of them. They all work the same to me. So I just need to know which one is cheaper. Ellie the Quilter had recommended this one, Magic, and you can see how big this bottle is. those 32 ounces there. So she claimed that it got your stuff paper flat. I don't know about that, but I've been diluting it because this stuff is expensive. Sometimes I use Faultless. But I like the mist more than I like the can spray. Okay, so let me put these back in their orders. Again, each one is chained together. So we just have to attach these two together to make the smaller block, and then the 4 patches together, and we are, what would they say, done. So we're going to take these. They are chained together because we didn't cut that out. We're going to use a clip, and we're going to take those seams and match those seams up. Now this is white on white, so it takes a little bit more effort to see it. And then right under the machine. Again, your clip is there to hold those seams together. Just remember to move it. That's one reason I like the clips better than the pins, because sometimes I will intentionally roll over a pin and I know I'm not supposed to. Even though I say in all the years that I have been sewing and I have been running over pins, I've never had an accident, but why should there be an opportunity for a first one? So I have not had that problem, but yeah, I also don't want to have it. It's just the whites. The other colors aren't too bad in seeing the seams. But sometimes my eyes like to play tricks on me with the white fabric and seeing the seams. White fabric, white light. It all just kind of blends together. So we have 2 done. We have 2 more to do. We'll press them, and then we will put all those units together. And of course, I will look at that book one more time just to make sure I put them in the right order, because again, we already jacked this process up once. We don't need to jack this process up again. One of the other things I like about leaving the chain there is that sometimes if you stitch the wrong side of the blocks together, you get a totally different looking block. Or the seams don't nest or line up the way that you need them to. And so keeping everything the same usually ends up with better results. Batiks, I flip up. Look, I was just working on, I did a star block earlier today from some of my scraps, and they were from Batiks, and I was like, which side is which side? I was like, pick a side and live with it, girl, pick a side. Okay. So these are done. And we're going to snip, snip, snip. And then we will press these open. The one good thing about opening up your seams is that it looks pretty on the inside, even though I know it's going to ravel, but it just looks prettier on the inside when you see it this way. Everything's lying all nice and flat. So I like that for that reason. I do like to look at the inside that way. And sometimes, you know, again, you're going to have bulk regardless. Okay. We just want to get there. Just give it a good press. We'll turn that over. And you can see that's what that unit is going to look like. But that's just the one unit. And again, we need to put all these units together to create the final block, which is going to make up the Timberland roses. And then once we finish that, we are done until I have to pretend like next week that I want to take the next couple blocks, the next couple pieces of fabric, and prep those. That didn't. One of the things that I hate about doing this is that those seams will fold over on me. That's the one part that I don't like. So I will get like all of my fabric I already kind of put together. So it's sitting in this. So I labeled them, I separated everything the way that I felt it needed to go. And so that's already done for each of the blocks. That part is finished. Just because it made sense to see what it looked like rather than to get to the end and go, oh, I don't have enough darks or I don't have enough blues. So I had to put everything together in advance. This called for 2 Jolly Bars, and there are quite a few of the Jolly Bar blocks left over, which is great because of course I messed up. Of course I've made mistakes. Of course I've had to redo those blocks over. I do have a long arm. My long arm is not on a frame, it is on a table, so it is considered the sit down long arm, even though the Bernina can be converted to, I can put it on a frame. I didn't have the space and I wanted a long arm. One of the things that I love about that is, I got the floor model, which made it a little cheaper than buying it out of the box. To know me is to know that, yes, I will take a deal when I can get it. Of course, it went right into my car and came right home. Had to set it up myself, but again, it saved me a couple extra dollars. And my whole thing was, the unit was together. So it's not like I had to do anything. I just had to put the machine on the table and call it an afternoon. So I got that unit like that, and the good thing is that it's right now it's down here in this space, but I can take the machine out off the table, and then the table folds up. So I can either move the table onto the back porch if we're having holiday gatherings, or I could put a piece of wood over it and use it like a regular table. And nobody would ever know it was my long arm machine. And then when the holidays were over, I could put it right back up. The frame itself, I don't know that you can fold it up, so I think, that's meant to stay in the space. And I didn't have the room with the current setup I have in the house to do that. So if I got rid of some furniture and, rearrange some things, I probably could have put a long arm frame in the house. And it's not too late because, again, the Bernina allows me to switch it over to a frame. So I absolutely could put that on a frame and use it that way. Okay, oops, move the iron, not the block. Okay, so we have the blocks. And I just need to pay attention to my layout to make sure that I have that layout right because, you know. Okay. So the layout calls for this. Oh, Susie, thank you. Have a great evening. Okay, I know what I want. I want darks in those corners and the lights in these corners. I think. Right? So then this looks like that. Or, to see the outsides are going to look different. That. So it's either these matching up or they're matching up in here, like they're next to each other. So, like that's one of the things that I like about the live is number one, I can get somebody else's opinion. But the other thing I like is that I can see it like on the screen. And then it's like, how is this reading? Because it's reading duller here. It's like a lot more poof in front of me. But I'm like, And then it's like that. So then the center has the two colors together, and then the bolder colors are here, like an X rather than right next to each other. It looks like it's a little bit more distributed to me this way. Thank you, thank you, thank you for the follow. Thank you for tapping the screen. We are at 4.5K. Thank you. So I think I agree. I think I like the second way better as well. So again, what do we have? 1, 2, 3, 4. So we have a 4 patch. So we know we're flipping over, stitching, and then flipping down, and this block will be done. We're going to line up those center seams and use a clip, and then we're going to stitch. So we have 2 stitch lines that we need to do. 1 press, and then we are out. Say go Jen, with under 2 hours. Now I could have lined up that other seam. Actually, I had 4 seams, 3 seams. I wasn't paying attention. Okay, well that's fine. So the seams I'm talking about is that the 2 4 patches are lining up. And then the center seams are lining up. And again, it's like by the time I get to the machine, I'm getting rid of that first clip already. So I really didn't need it, but just in case. We left these together as we always did with the 4 patches, because again, we can open it up. And I really do take my time with this. I really do, because I do want to make sure that everything is the way it's supposed to be. So the thing in the center again, that little chain, keeps everything together. Thank you, thank you, thank you for tapping the screen. Thank you for thank you for following me. I am on my road to 10,000, and I think I am 13 away. So I should hit that by the end of this week, if I keep going on the roll that I'm going on. Thank you for the follow, Priscilla. And we're just sitting there and we're just giving it a good press down. Yes, the struggle is real, girl, but I am rooting for you with the 5. Which I try to come into your lives every day and support. Says, I know, look, the struggle was real when I got the 5. This struggle is real for the 10. And then I need to work on some of them other plans to get those up as well. It's not a problem. You know it. You know, gotta come in. And then now I got Philly buddies. You know I gotta come in. Okay. Just make sure garments, crafts, and quilts. It's always just you can not press, but it's always better to press. This is best press depending on what I pick up, or I could be picking up flatter. This is all spray starch. It helps to keep that fabric a little bit flatter. Sometimes our fabric, because we're not using steam in our irons, sometimes it doesn't want to lay as flat as we want it to, and sometimes when it's not as flat as we want it to, the accuracy could be off a little bit. So I will, on occasion, use that spray starch to kind of help the process along. And you'll notice that I'm using more clips because I do want all those seams to line up as best as possible. And again, if the outsides don't line up, it's not the end of the world, because when I go to square this up, I'm going to lose some of that edge anyway, so I'm not as worried about it. But the seams, I want the seams to line up as best as possible. It is not the end of the world if they don't line up, but if you go for accuracy, you'll get pretty darn close. And if you can get pretty darn close, that means that it will be less noticeable when, you know, once it's all together and quilted. Like, you could very rarely see that some of my points are off. And usually, like I've said in the past, most of the people who I'm gifting quilts to, and some of the people I'm selling them to, wouldn't know the difference between that point being off a little bit or not. The only people that would recognize that is another quilter, or an extremely picky seamstress. But most people wouldn't recognize that. Hey Shannon, how are you doing? I thought you were still on. And so Shannon does jelly roll rugs, among other things. So if you are interested in following people Off Kilter Quilter and Shannon, Miss Fuel 22, are both looking for their fellow quilters. They are both looking for additional followers to get their number of followers up. So if you are looking for people, and they go live more than I do. So, I don't know. Some people just had that time. So, you know, if you want to catch either of them, absolutely follow them and help them to get their numbers up. I know that for, let's see. Ooh, there you go, Shamir. That's what I'm talking about. Of course, you know, when I try to do something, it doesn't work. But Off Kilter, she is doing a sew along and actually using a fat quarter shop pattern. I'm gonna do it because, hey, why not? I have the fabric. But I think I'm only gonna make the table runner. That's what I say. Then I get the cutting and that becomes a whole different story. But right now I said I'm only going to do table runner. So she is doing a sew along for that. And she's a fellow East Coast person, even though she's no longer on the East Coast. And her husband is hilarious. Okay. That's right. That's my buddy. Yeah, I come in and he's like, Philly. I'm like, yes. Okay. So let's see. We'll press this out. And then so, you know, and like I said, you know, Shannon does a lot of stuff. But you know, I'm into this jelly roll. It is still in the ball, y'all. I haven't done anything more with that jelly roll rug than to have it in the ball right now because just putting it together is just stressful. So I know I need to get started with that, but I'm gonna work on it. I'm gonna work on it. Hey, buddy. So Shannon does the jelly roll placemat. She does the jelly roll rugs. So again, another great person to follow. So here we are. This is, that's a shame when your mind just goes blank. Timberland. This is Timberland Roses. Again, this fabric is the Denim and Daisies. And again, like I said, perfection doesn't always come. And so, you know, if you're looking like close enough, you could see where it's a little off. And if I really felt some kind of way, I would fix it. But I don't feel any kind of way about that, so it's going to stay the way that it is. But I love this. Oranges and blues are amongst my favorite. So immediately when I saw Denim and Daisies, I was like, yes. Now, here's the interesting thing. The block that we're doing, I want to say next. I was like, that's the same block. So here is the one that we did today. This is Timberland Roses. This is variations, but it's the same block. The only difference between this block and this block is that we kept the colors the same in here. So these are smaller and we're going to use 4 of these and it's going to create the same size. So each one of their blocks for this one to make that quilt is a smaller block. And let me see if I can pull it up. So I used Post-its and I just marked each one with a Post-it so that I can see what they look like. These are, yeah, these are smaller. It's going to make a bigger block overall, but here is like, that's what the block is going to look like. But when you put them all together, it's still going to give you this. So it's going to make a slightly bigger block, but all of them are going to be the same color. So the block for 2 weeks from now is going to look similar to this, except the colors are all going to be here. I like the mix better, so that, you know, I just think this is going to pop more. So it'll be real interesting to see what the other one looks like. But I like this. So you're right, Shamir. When you quilt it and then when you're using it, you're not going to see that, right, where it's going to matter. But there are some people who at this point would have seen this and would have ripped it out and would have, you know, fudged it over a little bit just so that it lines up. It's your preference. That's not working for me. I'm not into that, moving it, unless it was really off. And if it was really off, now I'm going back in and seam ripping it. This I'm not seam ripping. So I absolutely keep that. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So, but I really think that, again, this is a cute block. This is block number 7. This is Timberland. So this is a Timberland block. Let me see if I can get to the, is this the quilt? Is this Timberland? Okay, this is Timberland. So here is like what the quilt would look like if you used all of these. So if I used all of the Denim and Daisies for this, or if I just used all these, like these 4 colors. So I don't have to use a whole collection. I could have just used 4 different colors or 2 different shades of 2 different colors, and then the final quilt would look like this. So I would need to make 9 of these to get the final block, which would be, and then they have sashing in between these, and then this would make, gotta go back to the one, it's like 56 by 56. And so, you know, you would get a lot of white centers that look like that, but it really comes out cute. But again, we're not making this by itself. What we're doing is we're just making one of the blocks and then we're putting them all together to create a sampler. So this is one of the blocks for the sampler. This is it. Okay. And yeah, we gotta measure that. Okay, so this is, like I said, Timberland Roses. And again, just to remind you, it is in my bio. It's the Jolly Bar book. There are 20 Jolly Bar quilts that you could make, or you could make the different blocks for the sampler like we are doing. Here is the table of contents. Right now, where my ring finger is, this is variations. This is the one that we are going to make next week, in 2 weeks. So that will be 11/19, because today is 11/5. So no, today is 11/4. So I have to post this by 11/5. So I will be posting the video and the finished block by tomorrow, and then we will be working on this before the 19th. So right before Thanksgiving I have one, and then I have 2 in December that I need to do. Once these are finished, we'll put everything together and this quilt will be done. At least the quilt top. Of course, we know we still need to bind it. I mean, we need to quilt it, so we'll be doing that as well. So thank you again, everyone, for joining us for the Jolly Bar 5 quilt along, sponsored by Fat Quarter Shop. This is a quilt along that I work on every 2 weeks. Every block is supposed to come out every 2 weeks. I do the sewing of the block the night before it is due. That way I can post the directions for it. So there are directions that I do post. You can also find those on their site. Directions are free in terms of what you need for the block. The actual measurements are in the pattern book. And if I'm not mistaken, this is under 12 smackers. And you're getting 20 patterns, so it's really a good deal. Most of us, when we buy books, we don't make all the patterns in the book. So even if you make one, that's about the cost of one pattern. So you can get the link in my bio for this. This is Denim and Daisies. You can find the link for that as well if you're interested in getting it. All things are from Fat Quarter Shop. I think they usually ship on a Monday, which is great, because it's a really good turnaround for getting everything that you need to put this together. So thank you again, everyone, for joining me this evening. Thank you for those of you who got your daily heart me's, for tapping the screen to get us to 6.5K, for hanging out and interacting with me, because you know I love to talk and I absolutely have no problem answering questions or doing anything else along that way. I do have a little bit more sewing that I am going to do, but I'm going to do that offline for some things that I need to work on, because somebody made a dress and it needs to be hemmed. So we will be doing that very quickly, because that should not take me any more than maybe a half an hour just to get that hem done. It shouldn't take that long, but you know, I'll mess something up. So I will get that done, because I might be wearing that dress tomorrow. So thank you, everyone. I will see you in 2 weeks for the next block. But of course, you know I will be around, because I have plenty of fabric and there's plenty of things to quilt. Have a good evening, everyone.